Paul, how about I start the recording and we get going? It looks like there's nobody else in the waiting room at the moment, but I'll just let people in as they show up.
Thank you, Barry. I'm going to go ahead and introduce folks. Here's the panelists that are coming up tonight. Most of them are here. One might be late. And I have some backstory. I want to kind of tee this up or frame this in a deliberate and responsible way, because this is a touchy subject we're getting into today, right? We've got a diversity of opinions. So everyone's been through this who's in the full self-driving program, right? And I'm going to get into the bit more of the details. But my point is, this is responsible kind of vetted drivers, where Tesla kind of wisely gamified the strategy of how do we let people trickle in a responsible, reasonable speed. And these are all Model 3, Model Y, and Model S drivers who purchased their Tesla FSD, also known as full self-driving. Each of these drivers paid thousands of dollars extra, varying dollars depending on when you bought it, for this optional feature. The recent participants opted in 2 weeks of enduring that safety score I'm showing on the screen here. Something that only about 150,000 drivers have done of the very nearly 2 million Teslas now made to date. 1 million of those are Model 3s globally. For about a year now, roughly 1,000 or 2,000 FSD beta testers, consisting mostly of Tesla employees, along with certain members of the public, several dozen of them, who had permission to post their experiences online, like Kim Poquette, who we had on earlier this year as part of the EV Club. Then in mid-October, they're joined by 1,000 new Tesla owners who obtained a safety score of 100 over a 2-week period. And then finally, 2 weeks later, folks like myself, folks with a safety score of 99, about 1,000 of those admitted in. And for me, that was particularly difficult because I was doing things like driving with family into Boston and back. So there's about a total of about 12,000 FSD beta drivers on US roads, with the FSD beta 10.4 for safety score drivers 98 coming up next during this slowed phase of the rollout. So what I want to do here is capture a little bit of the backstory for folks that might not be familiar with full self-driving or as familiar. I know there's a variety of EV owners here. And I think it's important to step back and frame this, a little bit politically as well, and what's going on in the world. And I think the timing of us meeting tonight is really good. We'll be opening it up to everyone at the end and unmuting folks for asking your questions, of course. All right, so what's it like to achieve a high safety score, this thing I'm talking about? Well, imagine you're driving with a carton of raw eggs perched on the front edge of your back seat. You exercise constant vigilance at all times to any situation that might arise, causing anything beyond gentle braking, acceleration, or turning, such as getting cut off in heavy traffic. This gamification trains you to drive very defensively. You are proving yourself committed to being an attentive driver, scanning your rear and side view mirror cameras like a hawk. The only current active DMS, driver monitoring system, that Tesla is using is having your hands on the wheel. But newer Teslas have an interior camera that also looks at the driver's eyes to see if there's attention is on the road ahead. I actually worked with clumsy eye tracking equipment in the early 1990s, so for me personally, it's really great to see this technology finally make its way into consumer vehicles. And note, no video of the interior is uploaded to Tesla. All right, next, irresponsible driving, including inattentiveness, has already gotten some folks kicked off the FSD beta program. So it's important to note that, because again, the public could easily listen to this YouTube video, and I want this to responsibly cover the major angles that are important to consider. Tesla's helping appease consumer watchdog organizations and maybe Consumer Reports for faulting them for not having even more countermeasures to prevent unsafe driving, even if the driver's actively defeating those multiple safety mechanisms. This is where the controversy starts. This is one of many controversies that admittedly surround the FSD beta program. Each of these panelist Teslas have a 360-degree view using 8 exterior cameras all around the car, paired with a dual-brain, liquid-cooled computer behind the glove box that runs at all times that the car is taken off park, sipping a mere 75 watts of power to avoid accidents, even when Autopilot is not engaged. Okay, that's about 3 times the energy consumption of a human brain. It never gets tired or distracted, however. And it gets new software updates pushed to it, these smarts pushed to it on a weekly or even daily basis sometimes from Tesla, using something called over-the-air updates, or OTA, wirelessly. This has allowed for what I believe is the fastest recall in history recently. Admittedly, Tesla ran into a bump in the road. I think they might talk about that a little bit with some braking on the highway. Just as the vehicles that were running the beta for a few days, within a week, they had 99.8% of the cars updated before NHTSA even published the recall notice. So I think that might be the fastest recall in history. So handled rather well without anyone visiting a dealership. It's important to keep in mind that gladly no serious accidents have been reported to date while Tesla is using FSD beta. One minor crash incident was reported to NHTSA today by a driver. The allegations are questionable, however. Let's wait for an investigation on that before concluding anything. Nobody was hurt. If you haven't watched or experienced FSDBeta yet, when the gray steering wheel appears on the Tesla's display, the driver is able to engage Tesla FSDBeta using a double tap of the right steering wheel stalk. This can be engaged on nearly any road surface, with the beta restricted to US customers for now. Once engaged, the car immediately handles acceleration, braking, and turning. This is an unusual experience for anybody trying this for the first time. There are many things that a driver can do to reduce risk considerably as they get accustomed to what it's like to actively monitor your car at all moments while it navigates surface roads. So most of us are used to highway driving, where Tesla's mastered that years ago. It's quite good at lane keeping on highways, but around town is a whole different world. Things happen faster. This experience is something I've tried to capture in my recent article, and I'll be sending you a link to this right in the chat. And this deck, these are all linked. So when you see an article like this that I'm showing on the screen, the deck, you'll be able to click it and link if you want to read more. Okay, here's what Tesla clearly states. The current enabled autopilot and full self-driving features require active driver supervision and do not make the vehicle autonomous, in bold. All right, just to point that out, Tesla's never claimed at this moment in history that full autonomy is here. They're saying it'll be dependent on achieving reliability far in excess of human drivers and demonstrated by billions of miles of experience and regulatory approval. You can read all that in the link to articles as well. Okay, recently, what else happened in the press? Yes, this is just a quick article summarizing what I went through. I actually had to upgrade some hardware in my 2018 car to get it ready for full self-driving. This is what happened recently, October 28th. How timely. Okay, Pete Buttigieg talking about traffic deaths. This is a little different take than the next article here, where we're talking about a very worrisome major uptick in vehicle crashes and deaths this year. All right, so this is pretty somber statistics here. And yeah, using it politically to say we need some cooperation of government, industry, and advocacy to change course. Let's compare and contrast that with the next slide I'm going to show you. Okay, this is just another resource that backs up the one I just talked about. It's actually linked to from the previous article. It's this next slide that I really want to show you. We've got a few things going on. We've got Blumenthal and Markey calling for FTC investigation into Tesla's misleading advertising of driving automation systems. That's their article name. But the basis of their concern is largely on a few intentionally irresponsible drivers, such as the Texas driver who turned out to be in the front seat, in an incident that has a whole lot more to do with going 67 miles an hour on a suburban road than it has to do with any sort of autonomy, such as Autopilot. So yeah, that's what's going on. Maybe Connecticut Senator Blumenthal, that's one approach. The other approach is what Missy Cummings is doing in her perspective. I've got an article for you to read, no matter what you think of her as the new National Highway Traffic Safety, or NHTSA, safety advisor. It's worth reading no matter what your opinion is. Let me leave it at that. There are also industry veterans that are concerned about, say, Consumer Reports and what they're doing right here in Connecticut and Colchester, where they basically rigged workarounds. You can see a beanbag hanging off the wheel. These are intentional defeats, putting the seatbelt behind their back, etc. So there's a lot of controversy around this, but let's move on to the next slide here. This is a bit of a rant. If some of you are more of engineering, propeller heads, like I kind of am. Oop, yes?
Right. I mean, yeah, it's hard to stomach some of these things.
Yep.
If I could just raise one small point. There's a lot of TikTokers and whatnot that, trying to make a name for themselves, just like the media looks for clicks with sensationalized headlines, or Consumer Reports wants to be relevant, whatever, or Edmunds. So a lot of hate and a lot of just people trying to, create some fame for themselves. Okay. There are billions of miles recorded on Autopilot today. There's, as you say, thousands of FSD beta testers recording miles every day, each and every day. We're talking about TikTokers that are being kind of sensationalized out of context, because what are they? 0.00001% of all miles driven, where somebody records a 10 or 15 second video, for whatever reason or purpose. So, having that context, I think, is important, because the media just feeds on this stuff. All right. And so, if people who don't know, who don't have firsthand experience, like the people on this panel, would think, oh my Lord, right? And so I just call attention to that because context is so important in terms of where we are in this evolution.
So I'm going to step back a little bit about the technology. I mentioned there's a brain in the glove box that's burning 75 watts that's looking at all times at all 8 cameras. And now there's a 9th camera looking at your eyeballs inside the car to see if the driver's paying attention. That's the hardware tech. So let me get into the software for you a little bit. Tesla's approach is different than both 2021 GM Super Cruise and 2022's upcoming Ford Blue Cruise. Those are optional lane assist technologies that focus on well-mapped highways, highway driving. Okay? Waymo cars, Aurora trucks and taxis, and other autonomous fleet vehicles take the pricier route to autonomy by using shared fleet vehicles that aren't available to individuals for purchase. So the tech in those is very different. Tonight we're focused on consumer tech that anyone can buy in a Tesla, for example. But the way it works is quite different than GM and Ford's approach. It's not about mapping here. It's about AI and machine learning from the real streets, the real world data. Okay, so how do these software smarts get smarter? And that's covered in my last paragraph here. This is via real-world inputs from actual drivers, like the folks on the panel you're going to hear from tonight. They override the Tesla beta software that's programmed into that brain I told you about in the glove box by using a simple brake pedal, which completely disengages all autonomy instantly. All right, so the driver's now doing the steering, doing the braking, doing the acceleration, totally on the driver the second they tap the brake pedal, or the second they tap the right stalk by the steering wheel. All right, so those are signals to Tesla. So they've overridden or stopped the automated FSDBeta software running in their car. It's basically sending a telemetry signal to Tesla saying, you could do better. I had to override as a human. I didn't feel the car was driving like I would as a human, so I intervened. So hopefully that kind of tells you what this fleet of training is happening here with 12,000 plus people. Tory Brooks, I believe you had the question. When these FSDBeta testers get back in their driveway, again, these are people that bought their car, paid for the software, and opted in, and clearly read disclosures on the screen telling them warnings. The car may do the worst thing at the wrong thing at the worst possible time. Your hands have to be on the wheels. All of that. They're very clear. When they get home and they're back on Wi-Fi, their car automatically uploads these events to Tesla, including video footage that the drivers manually tagged as important for Tesla to review. This data is analyzed and crunched by Tesla human employees who tags the data and work with the data, but also there's increasingly computers involved too, and featuring impressive purpose-built AI-optimized supercomputers named or dubbed Dojo, the world's most powerful AI training machine. So there's a purpose-built machine that's making the fleet smarter. So it's ingesting all that data, and it's using machine learning to create a better software update for the next release of FSDBeta, which is then pushed to Tesla employees for a day. And then only if the code is deemed roadworthy, it is then pushed to the public FSDBeta testers that I mentioned before, those that have the high safety scores and have opted into the program. And rinse and repeat, learning faster and faster, to drive better and better. It's hard to imagine a more positive use of artificial intelligence and machine learning than to reduce the likelihood of bad things happening on the road. So with that, it's time to start the panel discussion. I'm going to jump out of my slide deck and into the agenda here. And at the end of this deck, I've got some videos in case you're interested. Let's get to the agenda. And here we go. So right now, we're finished with me doing our little pitch, framing everything, right? We're right here around 7:25. I'm going to introduce each of the panelists going around the room here and give them 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes, whatever, to get to know each of them. So I'll start since I'm unmuted and talking in already anyway. I'm the moderator tonight. I'm also a new FSDBeta tester, so I've had it since October 29th. I'm also a YouTuber and member of the EV Club of Connecticut leadership team, and I've only done about 50,000 miles in the last almost 3 years next month in my EV using 60 superchargers across northeastern US and Canada. So as a frequent business traveler or personal traveler, yeah, having access to a supercharger network was key for me, and a whole lot of alone solo miles driving from DC to Connecticut, whatever, 4 or 5, 9-hour trips to Pittsburgh. We've done it all, my wife and I. So we're quite glad this car and the tech came along when it did. And frankly, for us, the highway mileage, the highway automation, the lane keeping the highway with speed sensitive cruise control that can go all the way to 0 and stop and go traffic has just been game changing and fantastic. But for me, thinking about self-driving cars around town also, it's really exciting for me to be a part of this program, thinking about it for 3 decades. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to David. If you can go next and unmute yourself here.
Hey, Paul. Yeah, this is Dave Connaughton. I've owned a 2018 Model 3 long range all-wheel drive since 2018. I bought it new. Immediately signed up for full self-driving when I bought the car new, and have been enjoying navigate on Autopilot for quite a while. And just recently, I was in the 100% group that got the full self-driving. And we're myself and a few other people are starting up a club pretty much centered in the Boston area, but covering Eastern Mass, Rhode Island, Eastern Mass, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. And we're waiting approval from Tesla to become an official Tesla club. And I'm part of that leadership team. I also help organize rides and meetups, mostly rides during COVID. We've done a couple of rides to the top of Mount Washington. We're spreading them out. We have an upcoming one on the 13th in Wareham, Mass. And if you'd like to get information on that, send me your email address, and I'll get you added to the invite.
Thank you, David. And living your heart for myself, a little easier for me to get to your events. They've been a lot of fun. And you've got one coming up this Saturday, right? So believe. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Saturday.
So yeah, reach out to David. If you use Twitter, you can follow him right there. All right. Next, we have John Harris. John Harris, go ahead and unmute.
Hi. So I met Dave actually in the last year or so as part of forming this group, and also meeting up with him and others at some of the events we've had in the last year. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this organization goes. I've been working in the information technology space for a software development company for the last 30 plus years. And living and working in the Boston area, I went to a technology conference in Boston. Tesla has a showroom right next to the Heinz Convention Center. And lo and behold, one day during lunch, I decided to check it out, went for a test drive, and placed an order within a week. So my journey began in September 2017 with a Tesla Model X. Fast forward 4 years, and I decided it was time for a refresh. I had actually traveled 100,000 miles on my Model X in 4 years. Part of what drove me, pun intended, 100,000 miles was a affinity to find superchargers that had not yet been charged at by myself, and occasionally not by anybody else that we knew of, and to visit them. So I've actually traveled across this country numerous times, including northeastern Canada, to over 716 Tesla superchargers that I have, tallied up as unique visits to myself. And I know I'm not alone in that quest. Julius on this call is a member. In fact, he's right behind me in line in terms of the count. So I'm looking forward to healthy competition with him and others. But anyway, I had purchased full self-drive on the Model X, not as part of buying the car, but as an after purchase upgrade when the Tesla announced the free upgrade to the FSD computer for everybody who had the FSD software option orders. So I actually upgraded at that point. I wanted to get access to it, thinking it was going to be within a year or so that would be usable. Here we are. Several years later, and we're starting to see the fruits of our investments and our interest in that technology. Recently I upgraded the Model X. I traded it in just over 100,000 miles for a Plaid Model S. Downside to that was literally the day before I got the Plaid, the beta button software release rolled out. I clicked it and opted in to the beta program qualification process and the safety scores the day before I traded in my Model X, and had to wait, I think, at least a week and a half before that feature became available on the Plaid as a newly released update. And I've been suffering the pains ever since, where you have to drive the Plaid around and not really enjoy it for what it's meant for. But despite all that, I managed to achieve a safety score of 99 and get into the beta program on October 24th. That was even after a day on the track where I totally blew my score, and thank you, Internet, learned about the ability to opt out of the program, wait a little bit, opt back in, and that reset my score to 100. And then again, babysat the car for a week or so after that before I was in the program. So looking forward to share more of my experiences of beta, and if there's interest about the supercharging road trips across the country, is whatever comes up. So.
Oh, thank you so much. It's fun to see the smiles in the audience here, imagining your car that can go 0 to 60 in 2.99 seconds, yet you're on the safety program where you're accelerating at maybe 0 to 60 in 20 seconds, right?
I still haven't pushed it as far as it's capable of. I don't dare.
By the way, for the folks that don't own a Tesla, and there's many of them in the call, you can accelerate and they don't actually ding you on it. The thing is, if you're going at all over the speed limit or something fast where you're putting yourself at more risk of someone cutting you off and you have to jam the brakes, you've earned your score. So we're all kind of smiling in a knowing way, knowing it must have been tough for him to resist the temptation to launch and have a little fun with his new car. But thank you, John, for that story. No, that's really awesome.
But you can do a 2-button reset while you're driving, and that drive won't be counted.
I forgot to do that the day I went to New Hampshire Motor Speedway and was doing hot laps around the track. So the first set of hot laps, I forgot to press that button. Knowing full well I could, I remembered it on the second set of hot laps, but the damage had been done at that point.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
just don't put it in park and don't get out of the car.
Exactly.
So yeah, funny timing. I got to do that a few weeks before the beta program, so I got lucky. I was on a track, right, and that data, didn't matter. And it was done safely with no other cars around. Not a big deal. But yeah, I love these stories. This is so much fun. Thank you guys. And Michael, actually, you were next anyway. Roger could not make it. I just got an email from him 2 minutes ago. He's an IT pro and some stuff has tied him up and he just can't make it. So he is awesome. He's got a YouTube channel. If you follow him on Twitter, you'll see a whole lot about his FSD experience. I made it easy for you to find that because all you do is just click on this link and it brings it all right up. All right.
Yeah,
so
Roger is one of the original beta testers, so he's been at it for a while now.
Do you know how many months by any chance, Michael? I didn't know him personally.
He's original, with
so a year, right?
Over a year.
A year. That's what we're talking about here, right? That's a long time, and it's good we haven't been reading bad press because boy, we know people go after Tesla when something happens. So
yeah, well, exactly. So they've been very responsible, and those who could talk, right? I got a ride. Roger gave me a ride back at the kind of the Rivian event that was back in June, July. I don't know for sure. I think Barry knows. But the point is that it's been a long time coming, right? So I bought I have 2 Teslas. I have a Model 3 Performance that I bought in September of 2018. I bought it with FSD and EAP at the time, so they were 2 separate things. The FSD part was $3,000, so I feel like I got a deal. And it's been a wonderful journey ever since. And then about a year and a half ago, we picked up one of the first Model Ys, one of the first 1,000 bins. And that's my wife's car. So of course, my wife scored 100 in the Y, and I got dinged for a forward collision warning. And so I didn't qualify, but I've been, basically using her car and going for drives every day, or it's been taking me for drives every day. And so it's been a thrill. And then I just looked at the app like a second ago, and I was like, I got 100 now because that forward collision warning averaged out. So life might be good, right? I might get it on my Model 3 Performance. And so having both Teslas, it's been a thrill. We've taken both on road trips. So, from the early days, 2018, just summoning it out of the garage and doing some basic autopilot, to when they started adding new feature function like, lane change and then stop sign recognition. It's been I'm a tech guy. So, living in Connecticut, just soaking it up. It's what I've wanted literally for 10 years. So I came across Tesla in 2010. I didn't, have the money to buy a Roadster, original Roadster. And in 2012, when the S came out, I wanted to get in there, but I wanted it loaded, like with all the, whatever tech at the time, which is funny to say, 10 years later. But so day of announce, I reserved for the Model 3, and the night of announce of the Model Y, reserved for that, and the night of the Cybertruck announcement, reserved for that. I collect them all if I could. It's been just a lot of fun. The Tesla community is just terrific, and the Tesla Twitter community is just entertaining and very informative. So you can find me there, Mikey Likes. It's something that, I've taken, kind of my professional Twitter, kind of deprecated that and just went all in. And because you realized early on, at least I did in June of 2018, that, and there's obviously some people who've been buyers, owners a lot longer, that, this is a very precarious journey. There's a lot of hate out there. Legacy Auto, politicians now, the media, this is a very disruptive time. And so if you don't advocate, if you don't make some noise, you'll find that people will run away with the narrative. And so that's a big thing. And so very important that you not only own, but you socialize, your opinion, because it matters. It's particularly to your peer, your friends, your family. My wife's sister just said she wants to get a Tesla, and her mom got a Tesla, and I know lots of people who have. There's no more referral program, by the way. And so, very exciting times, and just wonderful to see kind of how this journey continues to unfold.
Guys, what does the beta test do that my non-beta test Model S can't?
So when you look at the menu of items for FSD is a compilation of a number of different features, like Autopilot or Summon or lane change or stop sign. So, you look on the website, there's about 5 or 6 different discrete features. And the one that we're talking about is auto steer on city streets. That's the feature. So you could always AP around. I've been using AP almost exclusively, around town, because it'll stop, it just wouldn't turn, right? But now, I can say, let's go to CVS, and it'll plot CVS in seconds on the navigation, and then it'll actually drive out of my driveway. It'll make a right turn onto the street. It'll creep forward, looking both ways. Creep forward, hit the stop sign, not hit, make a right at the stop sign and drive into town. All right. And so it's that left and right turn, which is, if you think about in terms of degree of difficulty, is the highest difficulty. And as Paul mentioned, that computer, is capable, the chip, they purpose-built the chips, 13 trillion operations per second to process all of the image data that's coming in from the 8 cameras. And now they've deprecated the sensors. So really it's about using Tesla vision as the one sole source of truth. And because they have this capability in the car, they're able to process all of that information, all that data coming in, and then make a decision. Do I go, do I turn? Do I go straight? Whatever it is.
So Tori, hopefully I'm giving you a visual as well of it in action, right? And what they do to try to earn your trust is they render computer graphics what the car is seeing. So passengers like my wife have a better sense of, what the car knows what's going on. We got these red lines showing curbs. You don't want to hit those. We got a white line on the right, which is paint on the actual road. We got yellow double on the left. Pretty good, pretty simple, a little cartoonish visual, which is, what you want to earn trust of the passengers in the car as well. And Tori, what year is your car, your Model S?
2018. It's my second one, and I've got a third one ordered.
Okay.
Except they don't have any chips.
Yeah, my understanding was that 2016, 2017, those cars need a camera upgrade to do FSD, but yours is fine. Yeah. So yeah, okay.
I got Autopilot and go on the highway and stay, but I don't have the beta test.
Yep, as Mike said, here it is, right? Auto steer in city streets is really what we're talking about, our focus tonight. A Tesla heavy evening. Most of our events are not. They just talk about all EVs. But tonight, we now finished with the panelist introductions, and we'll get into the questions, and we'll go around the room for the panelists. So we're going to ask for folks to stay on mute a little longer as the panelists discuss some stuff. Hopefully it'll be lively and fun, and then at the end we'll open it right up to discussions for everyone as well. So here we go. Let's get back to the agenda for tonight. All right, the first question. A little bit of lag in the Zoom, bear with me. Question 1, summarize your experience with FSD Beta. So I'd say we kind of got a little bit of that, but let's do it a little more formally here and go through the panel again. And just 1 second here, get that panel discussion up side by side. So how about David, do you want to tell us a little more about your first experiences, which you shared a little bit off camera before we actually started. Yeah, you're laughing knowingly. But yeah, this is a candid night, right? An Ask Me Anything discussion at the end, coupled with a bunch of stories you're about to hear from firsthand experienced drivers. Take it away, David. The question is on the screen there. Summarize your experience with FSD Beta in 2 or 4 minutes, somewhere in that range.
Thanks, Paul. I think just to step back a little bit, we really have to understand that this is beta software and that we're training it to get better. We're really part of history here, and this is something that we're going to be able to tell our grandchildren and everybody about. That we were here at the beginning when FSD was starting to roll out. Well, I'm a snowbird, so I was headed to Florida on the Friday when 10.2, I had 10.2, which was the original public beta that people were getting who had 100 scores. And then the weekend or 2 after, they rolled out 10.3. Well, I happened to be on a highway heading to Florida, and as luck would have it, I got the download. It worked. I drove a little bit, and I was getting a little fatigued, so I asked my wife to drive. And suddenly she started getting some forward collision warnings, and being a man, I'm thinking that she must be doing something wrong, but it was actually 10.3 kind of blowing up, and we were going along at about 70 miles an hour, and suddenly full slam on the brake with a forward collision warning on the highway. So we pulled over. I called up customer service. They had nothing. I looked on Twitter. I called up roadside assistance. They knew nothing about this. They were telling me I had to get towed to Roanoke, Virginia, which was probably 2 or 3 hours away. And they're like, that's not going to happen. So I got into Twitter and found out the solution was to just shut full self-driving off, which I did. And we continued on our road trip all the way to Florida, driving like an animal without navigate on autopilot. We didn't trust anything. So we got to Florida exhausted because we weren't using any of the tools that we had. But other than that, there are some things that it does well, some things that it needs improvement. And if I can hit these real quick, I kind of have them written down. Certainly driving on curvy roads and straight roads, perfect, stays in the lane. Down in Florida, you have a lot of roads that have 3 lanes. Does no problem. It anticipates turns. It changes lanes very smoothly, almost more smoothly than navigate on autopilot on a highway. I've got FSD set to assertive, but I'm driving in chill mode, and I'll get to that in a minute. Moving over from one lane to another for an upcoming turn is easy. I just said that. Making right-hand turns easy, always smooth, no problem. Avoiding stopped cars. There was a truck broken down in the middle of a 2-lane road, and it slowed down and stopped and perfectly drove right around it with some oncoming traffic coming. It was very smooth and no complaints there. It was very good. It nudges over for cyclists and pedestrians on the side of the road, which is very nice. Runners, for example, which makes you feel a little confident that it not only recognizes them, but gives them some extra space, just like a human would. And the on-screen visualization, as Paul mentioned, or someone just mentioned, does give you the confidence that it sees everything that's going on. Things that need to be improved. Turns can be really jerky with the steering wheel ripping right out of your hands, especially on left-hand turns. That needs to be a little bit more smooth, and I'm sure they're working on that. The Google Maps, sometimes they don't take you the way you want to drive, which seems to be new. But like I said, I haven't been down, I haven't really used it on city streets in Florida, so I can't tell you if that's changed or not, but that's probably a Google Maps problem. The car can be indecisive, so I changed it to aggressive setting. That seemed to have helped. Sometimes it accelerates too fast into a turn lane. So if you're taking a right-hand turn and it is a long turn lane, it'll wait to the last minute and then jump into that turn lane, almost accelerating into the turn lane. It's very aggressive. The one big request from my wife is that it be a little bit less nerve-wracking for a passenger, because while I, as a driver, it is training me to control it, a passenger does not have that sense of control of the steering wheel like you do. So that's something that really, I'm almost at the point where I'm not using it with my wife in the car. Pro tips. I got 2 pro tips for you. I think Julius mentioned that he's getting some hesitation and it stops in the middle of the road. Just gently press on the accelerator and it gives the FSD permission to continue. Now, I found that to be really helpful. And then the other thing is look up Chuck Clark's videos. He's got a great intro video for new FSD drivers, and he's continuing it. He's just done a series of unprotected left-hand turns, which I found was very good today. So that's kind of my summary. And I imagine everybody can add a few things of their own, but that pretty much hits everything I've seen online.
No, thank you. Chuck Cook, he's actually in my presentation deck too. He's a pilot. He does an amazing job with the visuals. Here's what it looks like. Let's have a look here. So we've got drone view on the left, wide angle view from the roof cam on the top, and $1,000 cable he's got hooked up, wired into his display to give you a non-shaky, perfectly contrasted, easy to read screen. He's got it all. So it's amazing what some YouTubers are doing with this, right? And the amount of time he's spending investing in testing this code as a pilot. It's just really cool. Never mind the voiceover and the production skills. So good stuff. I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for the great summary. David, you mentioned the wheel spinning pretty fast in a turn. So I'm going to hand it over to someone who's got a yoke in his car, John Harris, next, and he's smiling. Because I do think about that. Now, I'm going to say, though, David, before I hand it over to him, when it's spinning fast, a round wheel, I wouldn't say it's hard to grab, would you? I mean, you can grab it and stop it at any moment and overpower the car. But you're saying it's spinning so fast it's a little surprising for you as an experience when you're not used to seeing the motor.
Well, it's jerky. It's not only spinning quickly. It goes clockwise then counterclockwise real fast. So you kind of have to lightly have your hands on the outer diameter of the steering wheel. If you have your hands inside, you're going like this back and forth. So I just kind of put my hands like this gently on the outside and let the wheel do its thing. I don't know what the tires are doing. I can only imagine the tires are kind of fluttering back and forth. I don't really know because I can't see them. But the steering wheel is definitely jerking around.
Yeah, I've got GoPro cameras have G-force sensors, so I can actually do a telemetry overlay and see the car wiggle back and forth when the steering wheel does that. But I'm not on aggressive. It's not a big deal when it's a little herky-jerky. Yours sounds like it's turning back and forth in the middle of a turn. It does sound weird, but that might be the aggressive setting, right? Partly to blame. But
I'll play around with that.
Yeah. So John, tell us about your Plaid, and you've got a steering wheel, so it makes you pretty unique.
Yeah. So I'm gonna dig right into that particular comment to make sure I touch upon it effectively. I'm certain the tires are turning when the wheel is turning, because it's a mechanical connection between what you're touching in your hand, the wheel, and everything through to the tires. So there's no electronic simulation in between. It's mechanical. So yeah, the wheel and the tire are definitely turning in unison. So when it's jerking back and forth like that, it's the computer trying to make instantaneous decisions about what it's seeing visually and how to correct the path it's predicting through that intersection. So yeah, it's making lots of decisions before it finally comes out and has a smooth decision as to how to proceed through an intersection. So yeah, I really wish I had a round steering wheel with that particular point of the FSDBeta, because as you've noted, David, I'm
Friday,
experiencing
October
the same
29th.
thing with my car and the yoke, where I've only got 2 touch points on the outer edge of the wheel and the rest is air. So when it's spinning, I'm basically floating my hands outside of that perimeter of the wheel and hoping that if I need to catch it, I can get my hands in there on the wheel to correct it if I need to. I've so far not had to make an emergency correction. I'm willing to tolerate it going through that intersection, but I think at the same time, when it comes to taking turns, if there's any other traffic around, I am very quick to disengage the full self-drive beta and do it manually, just out of, I'm conservative by nature, and I'm overly cautious in that regard, probably because I've only had it for a short time as well, and I'm being more conservative. But yeah, so that's really the one. Yeah, that's with the Plaid. So that's the one thing that I wish I had with the Plaid. That's the one time I wish I had the round wheel is when I need to monitor that car is doing the steering and I might need to take over. The rest, I'm comfortable with the yoke completely. In the month and a half I've had the car.
Hey, John, correction for you. I think the steering is drive-by-wire. I don't think it's a mechanical like rack and pinion or anything like that, is it?
Well, if it's drive-by-wire, there's a direct relationship between it. There's no like soft, you do a 90% turn and it's going to figure out what the right ratio is based on that. I mean, it's literally a 1-to-1 ratio. And that's another complaint about the yoke, but that's another, story altogether and not something I really care too much about. But in terms of my experience with the Beta, as I mentioned earlier, I've driven 100,000 miles in my Model X across the country, lots and lots of highway miles, but lots of, other miles around the highways. A good percentage of the highway miles were on the Autopilot feature, which from September 2017 to this past month has progressed enormously. I would say when I first got the car 4 years ago, Autopilot wasn't, I guess, where FSD is today in terms of making mistakes and needing to watch it like a hawk, but it wasn't far ahead of that. You definitely needed to pay close attention to it because its sensors would make the wrong decisions about going under overpasses and would jam on the brakes. It wasn't good about any kind of variance in lane markings. So the progression of Autopilot over the last 4 years has been nothing short of remarkable. And as I've driven so many miles during that time, I could definitely feel it getting progressively better and better, to the point where while I would still monitor what it was doing, I was very confident in its decisions almost all the time, perhaps overly so at times. And I freely admit that I'd probably driven at some times when maybe I should have pulled in and gone to sleep. But the Autopilot has been there to allow me to continue a drive that, under other conditions I would not have made. I would not have even considered driving without that kind of assisted technology. I never fell asleep at the wheel, mind you. I'm being perfectly clear. I was safe, but I definitely drew further into the night than I would under any other assisted technology out there. So bringing that forward to the full self-drive beta, I'm kind of feeling some of the same things going on with FSD, where it's reached a point where it's able to be put in an appropriately advised and qualified driver's hands. And I think the safety score is as good as any technique to qualify drivers to get access to this technology. Are there better means? Probably. I don't know what they are. But you're going into this with your eyes wide open. This software, by Tesla's full disclosure in the email you get when you're signing up, can do the worst thing at the worst time. And you need to basically be babysitting this car just as if it's never driven before and be ready to take over. I feel like I'm driving a teenage driver who maybe hasn't even finished reading the manual for the learner's permit. I mean, you really need to watch it that closely. All of that said, I am just blown away at how good it is behaving out there. The behaviors that you've noted, David, in the turning through intersections, I think is the biggest standout in its behavior, where it will approach an intersection very conservatively, very tentatively, almost too soon, stopping, and then gradually edging up to a stop line or to a point where it can see cross traffic. I find I need to coax it forward a little further because I can't see the cross traffic as effectively as I'd like to allow it to proceed. So I've actually disengaged at times because it was starting to go, but I didn't feel confident it could see. In hindsight, it could, but I wasn't confident in its abilities, so I disengaged. But other times where I thought it was proceeding into an intersection that I wouldn't necessarily proceed through based on my more conservative driving style in that kind of situation. But all of that said, and the two releases of beta that I've had, the 10.3 release and October 24th, and the most recent update on November 11th, the 10.4 release, it's definitely progressed in its smoothness. I think there's times when it's seeing more, I don't want to say ghost images, but it seems to be responding to things that I can't see in the road now that I think on the 10.3 release a few weeks back, it was not necessarily doing things with. So I'm finding it's jamming on the brake, slowing down a couple miles an hour, and then almost immediately continuing, like it's seeing something that says, oh, never mind. So some of that I'm confident it's going to improve with.
Phantom braking continues to be an issue.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it the same phantom braking that I used to see on a highway at 60, 70 miles an hour, and you approach an underpass or approach a semi-trailer, and it would jam on the brakes like 10 miles an hour. And the first thing you're doing is looking in your rearview mirror to see if you had somebody crawling up your tail.
Hey, John.
So
just to clarify, it would lose about 10 miles an hour in speed. It wouldn't slow the car all the way to 10. You would intervene by then, right? I just want to be clear on that.
Very good clarification.
Yep. Okay.
So if I was going 75 miles an hour, it would jam on the brakes, slow down 10 miles an hour to 65 perhaps, and then resume speed from there.
All right, great.
All without any real obstruction being ahead in the roadway.
All right.
Yeah, now it slows down, at least on city streets, 2 or 3 miles an hour, and like John said, it's very short duration.
Very short duration and very quick to say, oh, never mind, in terms of your impression of what the car is doing, and it continues. But
I don't think the brake lights engage when it does that.
I agree. I think it's all regenerative braking deceleration, which at least on my car is very strong. Almost as strong as somebody actually actively stepping on the pedal and feeling a sudden deceleration.
Yeah, I think I would politely disagree. If you feel deceleration, your head's lurching forward a bit, those brake lights tend to go on. If you let off the accelerator quickly without your foot anywhere near the brake pedal, your car can very easily do it.
I'm not seeing that, and not that I was looking closely, but I don't think the lights are coming on, but I could be wrong.
All right, well, let's move.
And I'm not sure.
Let's move to the next person here.
One other quick point. The one thing I wanted to also mention is that I do believe with the FSDBeta, they're using a different algorithm to look at road signs with respect to the current speed limit. I've noticed over the last year, the car has gotten very good at detecting a speed limit sign as you drive by it and immediately reflecting that in your display as the current speed limit, which may or may not be what the car previously had known from GPS coordinates. With FSD beta, that is definitely different. Where I go by one stop sign on my road every single day, it does not see it. It does not change the speed. I turned off FSD beta, which you can do in the user interface. You can disable that and go back to regular autopilot. It immediately recognized that street sign again the moment you went by it. So that's definitely a change in behavior that I hope Tesla fixes.
All right, great point. And John, just kind of fun to see the comment below this video. Here's someone in Australia saying, do you get more stress when driving to your destination with the software running? And it's this common theme here with Kimpaket too. Yes, this is work. Basically, people volunteering to do work for free, to very carefully, attentively watch their car and train the network, train the fleet of Teslas that are not just people that bought full self-driving. I want to emphasize that. This is training the whole fleet of Teslas to be smarter cars and be better at accident avoidance, okay? That's a really important point to drive home, not just the folks that opted in and paid the money for this. So let's move on to, let's see who hasn't gone yet. Mike, do you want to go next on your experience with full self-driving?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent, thanks.
This is a great conversation. I'm concerned, that we're talking about a lot of specifics, and I'm not sure people really grasp, well, one, the magnitude of the change and the innovation, but also just to simplify, the benefits. I did a road trip over the weekend. I just went down to New Jersey for a football game and came back. And by and large, between the highway and the roads, the car drove me there with very, very few disengagements. And so what it does extraordinarily well. And, it's difficult for many of us because it's been decades since we learned how to drive and got our learner's permit. But I do, I just went through 3 kids, getting their learner's permits, their licenses, and, going off to college and whatnot. And so the experience feels very similar to me, that I now have a student driver in my car and they're driving and I'm just kind of supervising, working with them, coaching them at times, taking over when I need to. But, for the most part, it's learning and it's learning quickly. So where I would think a turn, was kind of jerky 2 days ago, I don't know. I don't understand it. Right. But, the next day it's as smooth as silk. And so, this has been the progression for years now in terms of how, this neural net, this learning machine is taking in all of this data and getting better, incrementally better by the day. And, someone mentioned, the initial release for the expansion of the beta testers was 10.3. They just came out the other day, Sunday, with 10.4. And what Musk said is version 11 is the version where we move out of beta, and for anybody who's bought FSD, it's now generally available. And so that day, he's 2 weeks, right? He said, it'll be soon, maybe by the end of the year, probably not. But in terms of the progression, it's been incredible just to watch day by day. Now, I'll tell you, is it perfect? No. It doesn't recognize no turn on red. It's a sign, it's up there, but it doesn't know what no turn on red is. And so, it'll turn on red but you have to you have to actually stop it from doing that and put your foot on the brake. But if you left it to its own device, it does a right on red by itself. It knows to do that.
Mike, I think most of the country does not have no turn on red signs.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Kind of a New England, Boston thing.
Yeah, I was wondering because I asked some people, it's like, and I posted the sign on Twitter and I said, do you guys have this? Because I didn't know, right?
Never saw one in Florida.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, this was built, largely, the people, the engineers, the labelers, they're all in Northern California in the Bay Area. So what do they know, right? And so Roger was the only tester in Connecticut, Kim Picat, whatever, in Rhode Island. There weren't that many. And so, they're learning. But the thing they learned, which was why it took so long, is that having sensors and cameras wasn't efficient, because the sensors would argue, you could imagine it. Sensors see something and the cameras see something different. And then you have to, figure out, well, who's telling the truth? And so what, Tesla realized, and this guy Kripathi, you should watch his videos because they're amazing. He's the head of this whole AI team that's been building this. And, basically, they decided to default to the vision. And that was a big aha moment in this journey. And so in that, the whole Missy Cummings thing that, was mentioned, Paul mentioned earlier, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who are very pro LiDAR. And so Musk said, LiDAR isn't the way. And he said that like 2 years ago. And so, it took that whole community of people that have been building these, level 5, autonomous vehicles and kind of, blew it up. And so, no end to the disruption, in all these different communities. But the point is that, Tesla Vision is at an economical price point, and, they're all in, Tesla's all in on developing that capability and scaling it. And that's what they're doing. And so just so you see it, if you're in the car and you're using it, you see it, how it's doing that. And so here's what I'm going to, suggest in terms of my observation. The problems it's seeing aren't Tesla problems. They're community problems that, you get to so you're used to it, but, for a first timer, it's confused because, the lane markings aren't appropriate. In Connecticut and probably most of New England, the roads don't quite, meet up in the way that they should. There's a lot of like awkward intersections, right? I get to one intersection in my town, it thinks it needs to make a, jog to the left and then make a right, but it's the intersection. So, that's a lot to learn. And so I think there's going to be a list in every community of hazardous areas that a community is going to have to evaluate, right, as autonomous vehicles start to become, more common. And I think that list is going to be a big deal.
Well, thank you for that summary and of your experience and your thoughts on it. Yeah, it's nuanced. It's difficult to talk about, and anything we say taken out of context is a challenge, right? This is tough stuff, but I hope the folks that have not had a chance to experience, and I know what that was, like waiting for this for 30 years myself, basically. You just don't know until you're in the car. And it is true what was said earlier that being a passenger is less pleasant. It's just not. It just is. They don't have control. That's true in any car, never mind when the car is being driven just even a little bit robotically and the wheel is just a little herky-jerky. On mine is much less aggressive than David has it set to, so I'm only doing like 30 in that video I was showing you earlier on the side there. And the wheel, I don't think it would wiggle a little or hesitate, but it wouldn't actually start turning back in the other direction in the middle of the turn. Sounds like you've experienced some pretty extreme stuff. But yeah, I'm just getting started. I've only had it for 2 weeks. I'll also say this. I'll just give my experience as we wrap this part of the discussion up pretty soon here. And that is, wife's first time out. Similar impressions. She's not too fond of the experience. She would probably rather see a whole lot more progress before she consider hanging out with me again. But I will say, in that first drive, having a co-pilot watch things like, oh, you've reached your destination. That's why your car just slowed down to 30 in the middle of the road rather than the 45 it was going. Instantly resolving a mystery to me because I was the one driving, not paying attention to the screen, paying attention to the road, right? So having a co-pilot's great if they're willing to do it. For your first time out, not a bad idea. David's nodding his head, and go out late at night when there's very few cars, especially for your very first time. Like anything, there's a bit of a learning curve of what the experience is like. To be super responsible watching the car like a hawk. That's the common theme here. All right, who didn't get to go that hasn't had a chance to share their experience? Let me have a look at the list here. I think we're good there. Let's move to the next topic then. Okay, the next topic, kind of future, looking into the future. Let me get that on my screen here. All right, Zoom likes to say on the window on the tops there, so it's making it a little challenging for me while I'm recording and putting everything on top of the same screen. Let me go ahead and move this off to the side a little bit so you guys can see this. All righty, here we are. Back to tonight's agenda and where we're at in the questions. So I've already published what we've done tonight, and the little introductory comments I made, not so little introductory comments I made, they're all right here, okay? So everything I said and all the links, all right there, already published. If you go here, where are we in the agenda? We've gotten through summarized experiences with FSDBeta. We're running low on time, so I'm going to want to skip question 3. Let me think about that. Do I want to go with 2 or 3? They're kind of related. So I'm going to kick off question 2 and then open it up to the other panelists. So what do I think of the near and long-term future for FSDs? For me, the excitement is being able to tell my wife her standard range plus that we got for $38,000 minus the Connecticut cheaper rebate of $1,500 minus federal rebate of $3,750. So we got our car in at a pretty reasonable price, similar to the 30 years of Honda Civics we've been driving. That was a big deal to be able to tell her, this training we're doing of my long-range, more expensive car that I drive for work is helping her car become smarter around town as well. That's a big deal to me. That's the exciting part in the shorter term, right? That's a near-term thing. But to me, to watch the car grow up and become more like a 16-year-old than the 14-year-old it currently is, and having trained both of my kids and taught both of my sons to drive, that to me is the short-term promise. You know, whether that's 6 months, a year, where her car significantly drives better, both, on accident avoidance around town, if someone runs a stop sign or a red light, or on the highway. That to me is super exciting right there. The whole fleet, even the people that, got the lower end Tesla without the fully automated features on the highway. Next piece would be longer term prospects. I would imagine if we're looking at years out, sure would be nice if other companies would be willing to either license that tech or at least emulate Tesla. You've got Blue Cruise and Super Cruise from Ford and GM respectively. They're just starting out and they're doing a map approach completely different than what Tesla's doing with the 75-watt computer I talked about in the glove box. So I hope for a brighter future for all of them, ideally for everybody on the road, to have a whole lot better smarts about how to avoid a truck that just ran the red light that's threatening the lives of you and your family. So I'll leave it at that. Let's just go ahead and unmute the microphone, whichever panelist wants to speak next. And then we're going to just open it wide to everyone else who was kind enough to join us tonight. So just keep it down to 2 minutes if you could. What are your thoughts on the future of FSD? And we're going to kind of combine question 2 and 3 here. And, what are some of the challenges? I already hinted at some of those with NHTSA and all that before. But fire away. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Great. Thank you, David.
I think near term, I think the FSD beta team needs a break. And I would not be surprised that FSD beta does not get rolled out to any more people between now and January 1. I think those guys have a ton of data that our cars are uploading to them. They're doing it mostly manually. Dojo's not up yet, to my understanding. So I think short term, I think people are going to be waiting for probably 6 weeks now before more updates come out. I could be wrong, but that's my impression. Long term, the Dojo supercomputer needs to get up and running so they can digest this vast amounts of data that the fleet is giving them. I think it's going to be 5 to 10 years before robotaxi is ready. It needs to learn driveways, parking garages, conquer automated charging. I'm optimistic, but I think it's going to be longer than people expect. Canada and left-hand drive countries, probably 2 to 3 years out. Canada maybe sooner. And then right-hand countries, with regards to even the beta, probably 5 years out. I could be wrong. The other thing is people always treasure car ownership, especially in suburban and rural areas. So robotaxis probably 20 to 50 years before all cars become robo-taxis. But I do see that happening sometime in the future where individual automobile ownership would be for collectors, and the standard of transportation would be there'd be a car driving around, unmanned car driving around your neighborhood. You call up an app like Uber or something, Tesla, and it stops at your house. You hop in, and it takes you wherever you want to go. So it's going to be driving as a service, but with no ownership. With regards to safer challenges on the road for a safer future, the governmental regulators are slow to change. They really need to get out of the way. They're not, a lot of them aren't technically inclined, especially legislators. I think there needs to be more markings on roads, all roads, even side roads, to help vision work. Maybe it doesn't need to be, but I think more consistent marking across the country on roads needs to be done. I've noticed that a lot of extra lines have on the road have appeared even in New England over the past 5 or 10 years. So I think that's heading in the right direction. Here's one: cars across brands communicating with each other. That would prevent, that would maintain distance and speed, and it would prevent any sort of collisions if they were all just communicating with each other. Hey, I'm here, you're there, don't get any closer. Wouldn't that be neat? And the willingness of individuals to let a car drive versus a human, that's going to take some time. That's going to, that's like people not reading paper books, dead tree books, and going to electronic books. This is going to be an even bigger change in mentality. People not actually owning a car, and or allowing the car to drive itself versus you driving it. I think those are some of the things that we're looking at in the future, and it's going to be exciting to see how that rolls out. Hopefully I'm still here when that happens.
So David, we'll all be watching the YouTube channel to see what you just said come true 20 or 50 years from now, right, everybody?
Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah.
All right. Mike, you want to go next? Are you ready?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to put something out there, other people get to poke at it. I actually think we're going to hockey stick this. I think it's building, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's there. We're seeing it now. We get hints of it. I'm constantly amazed by the capability of today, and I'm confident that it's going to be exponential. I'm not in on the team, in the meetings. I don't see what I don't see, but you do get the feeling that progress is happening rapidly. I would say that the problem, and if you go back to Musk's quote from many years ago, he said that the cars would be robo-taxi capable. He knows that the regulators, the politicians, the people who stand to lose from this happening will fight tooth and nail, and so they're not. NHTSA just published a report about a Tesla accident in Florida, and it's horrible. There, 2 teenagers died in a Model 3 crash. So of course that's horrible, but it was only investigated because it was a Tesla. They don't investigate every, incident with teen drivers, speeding. And so there are 6 million accidents every year. And Autopilot already in its current state is proven to be safer. And so, whether or not, the regulators, these agencies and politicians get with the program, we have our esteemed senator from the state of Connecticut, basically saying that, well, it's mislabeled. It's not Autopilot. It's not full self-driving. I mean, that's the crazy that you have to deal with. You're totally missing the point in terms of what the capabilities are, and that the fact that this technology even today saves lives. So, I get on a soapbox a little bit about this because I'm passionate about it, because I want, who doesn't want safer streets? My kids drive. And so, it's going to be a day of reckoning within the industry. And as Paul kindly pointed out, I like to call it Blues Cruise, but, Ford's Blues Cruise and GM Super Cruise, they have not any of the functionality today. And only on mapped highways, about 100,000, Super Cruise, about 100,000 mapped highways. So it's limited, can't handle construction zones, can't, handle, it doesn't get off the highway, doesn't, change lanes. And so, what we've seen from Tesla is they've nailed the highway. All right. They've nailed city streets to the extent, left it up to, this left and right hand turn. And as far as I'm concerned, they're about to nail left and right hand turns. Now, can it get, from the parking lot? Can it drop you off? Can it, circle the parking lot? I'm waiting for the day when, my wife doesn't have to drive me to the train station. I can drive to the train station, the car can drive home, and then she can send it later to pick me up. Right. Or we go out for an evening to a restaurant and, I'm allowed to have a drink or two and the car drives us home and everybody's better for it. So, those days I think are, coming, or a parent, wants to go, can't, pick up two kids at the same time, can send a car to go, to school to pick up their kid, whatever. Right. The use cases, or if for older people who, can't see at night, they're still on the road, but,
Right.
The car can take over for them. So there's so many different use cases that just, imply. So that's why I think it's not 5 or 10 years. I think it's a lot sooner. As soon as the technology is stable for the majority of use cases, there's always going to be an edge case. There's always going to be something where, the car just stops or whatever, because it's in a situation. And hopefully there's some, remote backup or something like that to unwind it. But, if anybody's been in a Waymo car, you've heard, Waymo's just, going to dead end streets or, having limited functionality after 10, 12 years of, experimentation. So I don't know.
Yep.
Who knows where this is going, but I think the future is pretty promising.
Thank you. With those words, let's leave the last word to John Harris for a couple of minutes and then open it for everyone for questions. John?
Sure. I'd like to just reflect back on what David was sharing in terms of the pace of innovation with the beta releases. I actually am a little more optimistic of the pace in the coming couple of months, but I do agree that there's probably going to be a slow, measured improvement, as we saw between 10.3 and 10.4 over the last few weeks. I think that slow measured improvement is going to continue as they ingest the data from the new beta testers and figure out what to do with that data to improve what they already have, while incrementally adding new functionality that may or may not be considered revolutionary by those that have the technology. I think in the midterm, looking, probably 2 to 3 months out, I think the big hurdle Tesla has to overcome is their merging of the existing Autopilot technology stack with the full self-driving stack, where they've gone to vision only. And Elon has come out and said that that's going to be the 11.0 beta release. I'm very nervous about what that represents if it shows up in the hands of all Tesla owners, because everybody who's been driving Autopilot for a while has gotten very comfortable with what it's capable of doing, and perhaps in situations complacent. So I think if they roll that out to everybody, it's got to be either ready to do exactly what AP does today, or it's got to be in a position where they're being forward-looking in terms of communicating where it's going. Long term, I think the sky's the limit in terms of the features and functionality and social implications of what full self-driving can do to people with Teslas. And as Michael suggested, hopefully Tesla opening up this technology to other manufacturers to to add to their vehicles to make the roads safer for everybody out there. And I think the one challenge that I think I continue to find, and I hope Tesla makes a hard decision on, is that's driver monitoring. I do not like the steering wheel driver monitoring. It's too easy for people to inappropriately disable that with various devices and techniques published on social media. I think they should switch over to vision only, and if necessary, retrofit older cars with cameras in the cars to enable that functionality to make all the use of that technology safer for everybody out there. I think that's really all I wanted to share.
Okay, very good, John.
I just vote against that. Not because I don't think it's good, but man, people don't need nanny cams. All right. It's irritating. It's functional. Don't get me wrong. Right. I trust the car, but, I don't need, to be reported, because, my eyes aren't, open and, front and center, or my hands aren't at 10 and 2. We'll get to that point where if you actually have an autonomous vehicle, it'll drive. And, I think, the funny thing with the yoke is I think they're deprecating the steering wheel already. Right. But it's the kind of thing where, between the nanny cams and the nag factor, it's less enjoyable. And there will always be those people who try to fool, or, the TikTokers who try to do something stupid. But I think that's a very small fraction of, the ownership.
I agree.
Well, thank you. It's great to have diverse opinions. That's exactly what you just saw happen. Sometimes people are 180 degrees from each other, and people are going to feel differently. But this is just great. That the perspectives that were given were so much stronger because we had such differences of opinion and experiences, right? And different tolerance for risk, frankly, and age. We talked about too at the beginning. It's got something to do with what the experience is like for people as well. So. Thank you so much. Let's open it up for the other people who have been muted and kindly showed up tonight. And you guys were great for showing up. And now you might have some questions. So thank you for holding until the end. What do you get?
Can I get in?
Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
I apologize. I've apparently lost my voice. I had two comments and a question. The first has to do with the idea of Senator Blumenthal and others getting on the concept of full self-drive. It's not full self-drive, et cetera. And I just have to wonder how much easier everybody's lives would be if it had been relabeled. Just give it a different name. The other had to do with I was very pleased.
We could call it not full self-driving.
Yeah, exactly.
and FSD. The other FSD. The second comment had to do with appreciating what I was hearing from you guys doing all of this testing, all this beta testing. That I just leased a Polestar, and one of the factors was I really didn't want to have to deal with the self-driving mechanisms, and now I hear that you guys this is work that you're essentially beta testing. Well, you are beta testing for Elon and for Tesla. And it makes me think you guys deserve to have 50% taken off your cars.
My wife says the same thing.
Well, there you go.
I think we pay to work for Tesla rather than to be paid. It's pretty revealing.
Yeah, we pay to work.
There's always two ways to look at something. I get to drive the future today, and you can wait, 5 years or 3 years or whenever it is. That's your prerogative. But man, it's not work for me. I'm loving every second of it.
All right. That's a different perspective.
Yep.
The final thing, well, two things. Paul, I wonder if you realize that you're showing a split screen to all of us, or am I the only one seeing that? I've got half my screen is an empty Google search page, and the other half now shows me with the Polestar.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too.
And it's been that way pretty much right along.
Interesting. So you're not seeing the Zoom window or people's faces?
Nope.
Oh, that's interesting. Some sort of flaw in
They're
Zoom.
up at the top. They're up at the top.
That's very weird.
But the question I had is,
Okay.
you guys were talking about ensuring that roads, particularly in the Northeast here, and that they be marked better. And I wonder if anybody has any experience with snow-covered roads and these beta.
Not yet.
No,
I mean, I have experience on the Massachusetts Turnpike, not in snows on FSD, but in such situations of the road where, for whatever reason, the Turnpike Authority has decided to mill the center lane down for 0.2 of a mile and replace it with blacktop without replacing the white stripes on either side of it. That really freaks out Autopilot if you're not expecting that. For the most part, I've had no problems on the Massachusetts Turnpike and other interstates, but that kind of road condition freaks it out.
That's it. I haven't had that same experience. I've been actually shocked that when a new road, blacktop and without the lane markings, it's actually held the lane really well.
And you mentioned how wide that resurfacing is. If it spans a lane and a half, sometimes it's not so forgiving.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. But in terms of inclement weather, I've seen beta testers say that, when it's like raining hard, it won't initiate. And I've seen that just on regular autopilot on the highway if it's torrential. And so I imagine that, if it can't see the lane markings, it won't, it already knows not to do it.
I'm curious to see what FSD and the new Tesla Vision does with heavy rain. I've not driven yet in heavy rain. I did use Autopilot with heavy rain. As I said, driven across country, 100,000 miles. And there were times when the car was able to keep the lane better than I could in terms of what Autopilot was capable of. Does it check out eventually? Absolutely. But there are situations where it was doing better than I was, and I was very thankful to have it at the time.
There is a difference between, kind of autopilot, holding the lane and then, like navigate on autopilot.
Yes.
And so, it'll go from the single blue line to the dual blue line on the display. And so it won't change lanes in that situation. But I just this past year did about 9,000, miles road trips to out west and to Florida. And, I was just always amazed by, from a highway perspective, that, it's superb, regardless if there's construction, weather, whatever. And that's not just, driving the highway, changing lanes, but also getting on and off the highway. So those are, features that I think are well understood. And I'm not concerned, but when they do get to full stack is what they call it, it'll be interesting to see how this all comes together.
Yeah, I agree.
The other thing, just to add in on that, the 3 forward-facing cameras, that compartment is heated. So if there's any snow buildup on the windshield, to some extent, it will melt that and keep those cameras, at least to some extent, able to see.
So I went on a side road. We have a lot of leaves right now. And so there's no real lane markings, and I found it was struggling. In order to identify, it was tentative, conservative maybe, just to deal with the, this it hates narrow roads, I think, particularly when it's, a two-way street. And so, which is what we have a ton of in Connecticut, obviously. So it's interesting kind of how, I'm interested to see how it's going to learn or get more confident on those types of, that type of driving.
Mike, it's interesting you say that because I was driving on a road today and there's leaves on both sides of the road put out for pickup. And one thing the car did is it drove through the leaves. And then it decided it shouldn't be driving through the leaves. And then a car came the other way and it really didn't know what to do. It tried to dive into the leaves and then it stopped. And, but listening to you guys has given me confidence to get back in that car with my drunk teenager and give her another shot. But
oh, sure. I use it virtually all the time, but Sometimes if my wife's in the car, I'll shut it off.
Breaking news from Twitter, Elon hopes to release the FSD version 10.5 to 98 safety score users in about 10 days.
So thanks for putting that in the Zoom chat. And for those of you that are not seeing the Zoom chat, I'll also say my video recording is fine. It's like a 2/3 split screen where you see your faces on one side and web pages on the other. So sorry about the Zoom flaw there, but people that watch this on playback will actually have a better experience. So did not know until a few minutes ago you guys were having trouble seeing what I was doing. My apologies. But thank you again. And Barry, what do you think? Maybe time for one more question. We close this down, or?
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question.
All right.
And then I have to go
So
anyway.
can
So the meeting's gonna
someone
stop.
that's shy, maybe. We'll cut this off in like 4 minutes. Anyone who hasn't spoken tonight, do you have a question where you're just, I don't know, feeling a little shy, and now's your moment to unmute yourself and speak up? Okay. Still shy.
Well,
Okay, appreciate
I'm not
everybody.
shy, but I was wondering if you guys that have the FSD beta would recommend trying to get that.
I think it's for people that are interested in trying new technology. So people that are willing to explore new features that are not done, that are unpolished, and you're willing to accept that at face value. I think for people that expect a finished product, they should absolutely wait until it's open to anybody who's paid for it. And then even then, probably approach it like Autopilot is today. It's something that's there to help you, and something that you should always be prepared to, take over when it makes its inevitable mistake.
Well said, John. 30 years in IT myself. I'm so used to beta testing software. This wasn't a big pivot for me. I'm open-minded to it. A lot of people I know are absolutely not open-minded to anything with flaws. And it would not be a good choice if you can't tolerate, if you're not interested in tolerating that, right? So yeah, we're all a little different. Everyone has different experiences and background, but yeah, it's early days here. And no, it's work, as we hinted. It's not that relaxing, passive experience that it would perhaps eventually be. Okay. Michael, you're smiling. You have one last, you want to do the parting words for the night?
It's like, I've been, as I said, I've been waiting years for this, and I feel like this is the future we were promised. And so participating in this is just a daily thrill. When it does something that I wasn't expecting, like, speed bumps, and it slowed down for the speed bump. I was like, how did it do that?
I went by police cars yesterday, and it slowed down for police cars. I mentioned there's, rescue vehicles in the area slowing down. I'm with you on that. A giant grin on my face, like, this is incredible, and it's just so much fun. Yeah. And you capture that, Michael, on Twitter. If any of you want a happy Twitter account to follow, and some political and controversial where Michael stirs the pot, it's fun to follow him, because he
And in the spirit of counterpoints, I went over approached a speed bump today on beta, and it was not slowing down, or I did not perceive it to be slowing down enough for my Model S. So I disengaged at that point. But again, it's beta. It will recognize some things properly, and it won't necessarily recognize all situations like that. And it will change and improve.
And it might have recognized something yesterday and didn't today. It's going to be unpredictable.
Yep.
And you have to be comfortable with that. And, you have to be ready. You have to jump in and take over.
That'll be it for tonight. Thank you for letting us stay long, Barry, as the Zoom leader. And if folks that want to grab that Zoom chat, put it in your clipboard now, because once Zoom closes as an attendee, you're not getting that back. But most of those links and stuff that we covered in the chat are in my article. So thank you again for doing this. Thanks for staying long, Barry. And my local recording should be good. That's what I'll go with. I'll be publishing it by tomorrow. So feel free to share that with friends, family that couldn't join tonight. Thank you so much for turning up, and all the panelists especially. Really appreciate your time.
Guys,
this is great. Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.